The Law of Assumption. You are one assumption away from a new reality. Written by Kelvin W. Nathan. Published by Audiobooks. Office Introduction. The silent architect of your reality. There is a quiet, unseen force operating in every moment of your life. It's not fate. It's not chance. It's not luck. It's assumption. Before a decision is made, before a word is spoken, before a door opens or closes, assumption is already at work. It is the silent architect of your entire reality. What you assume to be true about yourself, about others, about the world, writes the script that life obediently follows. Whether you're aware of it or not, you are always assuming something. And here's the critical truth. Those assumptions, they are not passive. They are not harmless. They are not background noise. They are active creators. The law of assumption, the hidden power behind it all. The law of assumption isn't new. It's ancient. But in today's world, it's often overshadowed by flashier, trendier ideas like the law of attraction. But make no mistake, the law of assumption, it is the foundational law. It's the root system that determines whether your desires come to life or remain just out of reach. The brutal truth you need to hear: you do not attract what you want. You attract what you assume to be true. Desire alone changes nothing. But belief, anchored, lived in, unshakable belief, alters everything. When you fully embody the assumption that you are already the person who has what you desire, the outer world begins to shift to match that inner conviction. To live by assumption is not to pretend or fake it, is to step into the version of yourself that already exists in potential form: the successful entrepreneur, the healed body, the loving partner, the confident speaker, the creative force. You don't wait to become these things, you assume them as your truth. Now, and by doing so, you begin to think, feel, and act in harmony with that identity. This isn't delusion, it's conscious creation. We have been conditioned to believe that change is linear and external. Work harder, try longer, wait for the evidence. But the law of assumption flips the script. Instead of efforting your way toward a future result, you start from the end and live as if the result is already yours. The assumption is the seed, and your consistency in holding that assumption waters it into form. Your job is not to force the how. Your job is to remain faithful to the state of being, the consciousness that knows it's already done. You might ask, but what about my current reality? Isn't that proof of what? Yes, your current circumstances are real, but they are not final. Your current reality, it exists, but it is not fixed. It's not permanent. It's not your destiny. It's nothing more than a reflection of past assumptions, not a forecast of your future. The power lies not in reacting to what is, but in choosing what will be, and assuming it now. Every time you assume a new identity, a new belief, a new possibility, you issue an instruction for reality to reorganize itself around that version of you. This book, your manual for conscious creation, this book isn't theory. It's a manual, a guide to the foundations of assumption, the mental shifts required to live in perfect alignment with it. Inside, you'll learn the real-world application of this law in the areas that matter most: money, relationships, health, self-worth. But more than that, you won't just learn how to change your assumptions. You'll learn how to become them so deeply, so consistently, that your external world has no choice but to follow suit. It only takes one believer. No one else has to believe in your new reality. It doesn't require permission. It doesn't need outside validation. It only requires one believer, you. Your assumption, held consistently, held faithfully, is stronger than circumstance, stronger than time, stronger than opposition. This isn't wishful thinking. It's identity engineering. This is not about crossing your fingers and hoping the universe cooperates. It's about intentional identity. It's about becoming the cause, instead of living at the mercy of effect. You were not born to passively observe reality. You are here to command it, So the only real question is, what reality will you choose to assume? Next, believe, choose, become, decide who you will become, and hold that assumption as sacred, because the moment you do, life stops responding to your effort and starts responding to your essence. This is not a game of force. It's a game of frequency, and your assumption is the frequency that commands reality to align. Let us begin. For more information about the ebook version of this audiobook, check the video description or visit audiobooksoft.com. Chapter 1. What is the law of assumption? The law of assumption is simple in theory, radically transformative in practice. States, what you assume to be true becomes your reality. This is not about fleeting thoughts, not about wishful affirmations whispered in doubt. This is about deep-rooted convictions, unshakable inner beliefs that silently sculpt your world. When you assume something to be true, and you hold it as fact within your inner world, regardless of external evidence, that assumption begins to organize your behavior, your decisions, your emotions, even the responses of other people. The assumption becomes a blueprint, and the outer world starts building according to that blueprint, and use it to define who they are and what is possible. They believe they need proof before they can believe, but the law of assumption demands a reversal of this process. It tells you to believe first, assume the truth of your desired outcome now, and let the proof follow. It is not about ignoring reality, but understanding that reality is not as fixed or objective as we've been taught. Reality bends to belief, not the other way around at its core. The law of assumption is about identity. Who do you believe yourself to be? What do you assume about the kind of life you're meant to live, the kind of success you're capable of, the love you deserve, the health that is available to you? These assumptions are not always conscious. In fact, many of the ones creating the most resistance in your life are buried beneath layers of programming, past disappointments, and inherited beliefs. You may want something consciously, but if you assume that it's hard to get, or that it's not meant for people like you, or that you don't have what it takes, then those assumptions will quietly sabotage every effort you make. This is why people get stuck in cycles they can't seem to break. They change jobs, but still feel unworthy. They attract relationships, but continue to fear abandonment. They make more money, but still live in financial stress. On the surface, change appears to happen, but underneath, the same assumptions are operating. The law of assumption teaches that if you don't change the root, the fruit will eventually stay the same. To live deliberately, you must begin to monitor what you are assuming in the privacy of your own mind. If you wake up and assume the day will be stressful, your behavior will reflect that expectation. If you assume people are difficult, your interactions will confirm that belief. If you assume you are never chosen, your energy will subtly repel opportunities. These assumptions, though invisible, are never neutral, have creative power. They are constantly signaling to the world around you what to reflect back. This law doesn't ask you to be perfect or to control every thought. It asks you to choose your dominant assumption and stay loyal to it. If you want to be confident, you assume that you already are and begin to move through the world as that person, not because you're pretending, but because you're aligning. If you want financial freedom, you assume that prosperity is your natural state. You make decisions, take risks, and speak about money from a place of I already have it, not I hope I get it someday. This shift in assumption changes everything, not because it's magical, but because it reprograms your subconscious mind, which is the gatekeeper of behavior and results. Many people confuse the law of assumption with positive thinking, but there's a crucial difference. Positive thinking often feels like forcing yourself to feel good despite your current reality. Assumption, on the other hand, is about shifting into a new identity and living from that truth. It isn't about pretending you're rich while feeling poor, or acting in love while feeling lonely. It's about assuming that the version of you who has the thing already exists and beginning to think from that version rather than about them. You don't visualize your dream life as a faraway fantasy. You step into it now and claim it mentally, emotionally, and energetically. Skeptics will ask, but how does assuming something make it true? The answer lies in understanding that your mind doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. Neuroscience supports this. The same areas of the brain light up when you imagine an event as when you actually experience it. Your nervous system responds to assumed truths as if they are present facts. When you assume just following orders, most people live by observation. They take what they see around them. Success, your confidence rises, your risk tolerance expands, your Communication sharpens. When you assume love, your energy softens, your openness increases, and your presence becomes more magnetic. These subtle shifts create ripple effects. Your assumptions alter your state, and your state shapes your reality. The law of assumption is powerful because it puts you back in control. You don't have to wait for the world to give you permission. You don't have to fix everything outside of you before you feel good inside you. Simply have to decide who you are, what you believe is true, and then persist in that belief even when the evidence seems to say otherwise, because that is the moment most people quit, and that is the moment where the breakthrough often hides. Assumption is not blind faith, it's creative ownership. It's saying, this is who I am now, and everything else will align with that because I no longer align with anything else. You do not fight the old, you simply assume the new. You no longer argue with limitations, you assume abundance. You stop trying to fix self-doubt, you assume confidence. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. You are aligning with the version of yourself that was always waiting for you to claim them. In the chapters to come, you will learn how to uncover the assumptions running your life, how to change them at the root, and how to hold them long enough for reality to respond. This is a journey of identity, not just manifestation. You are not here to get something, you are here to become someone, and when you become it, you will have it. Every time you have always been assuming. The difference now is you are going to do it on purpose. Chapter 2, The Invisible Cause. Consciousness. As the creator, there is a reason why so many people spend years chasing outcomes and still feel like they're running in place. They chase success only to sabotage it. They seek love, but find themselves repeating painful cycles. They strive for health while silently expecting illness to return. The problem isn't their intention, it's the invisible cause behind it, their state of consciousness. Consciousness is the true creator of our lives, not effort, not time, not luck. This can be a confronting truth because it removes the illusion that life is happening to us and instead demands we take full responsibility for the energy we bring to every moment. Consciousness is not just thought, it is the total vibration of your being, your beliefs, assumptions, emotions, expectations, and the identity you operate from. You can think positively and still carry an identity of lack. You can set goals and still vibrate with the belief that you are unworthy of achieving them. Your consciousness is what instructs reality even more than your words or actions. You do not manifest what you think once in a while, you manifest what you chronically assume to be true about yourself and the world. Everything you see in your life today is a mirror of what you have been conscious of being. If you have been conscious of being overlooked, life will show you situations where you are passed over. If you have been conscious of being broke, opportunities will somehow slip through your fingers. If you are conscious of being chosen, loved, and deserving, people will treat you as such even if they don't understand why. The outer world is not personal, it is reflective. It responds not to what you say you want, but to who you are being. Being is not about action, it is about identity. You may take all the right actions, but if the foundation you're standing on is one of fear, doubt, or powerlessness, those actions will yield limited results. Change your state of consciousness, and you change the weight your actions carry. When you move from a consciousness of abundance, every step you take is charged with magnetism. When you operate from a consciousness of confidence, people respond to you with respect and attention. When your inner world shifts, your outer world reorganizes. The law of assumption teaches that your assumptions are the most powerful expression of consciousness. They are what you return to when the mind is quiet, when you're not putting on a mask for others, when you're sitting in your truth. Your assumptions set the tone for your reality. They are not passive observations, they are active creators. If your assumption is "I always struggle," then even in a season of blessing you'll find ways to interpret or undermine your progress. If your assumption is "everything works out for me," you will find pathways opening where others see none. These are not coincidences, these are reflections of consciousness being made visible. When you understand that your consciousness is the cause of all effects, everything changes. You stop chasing external validation, you stop blaming the economy, other people, or the past. You realize that changing circumstances without changing consciousness is like repainting a cracked wall without repairing the foundation. It looks better for a moment, but the same problem will resurface. Consciousness is the foundation. If you don't change that, nothing else truly changes. But if you do, even without external action, life begins to shape itself around your new self-concept. So how do you shift your consciousness? The first step is awareness. Begin by observing the stories you tell about yourself and your life. What do you assume when things don't go as planned? What version of yourself do you default to when you feel challenged? Most people live unconsciously repeating old patterns without realizing those patterns are simply mirrored beliefs. When you slow down and pay attention, you start to hear the assumptions running quietly beneath the surface. People always let me down. Nothing ever works for me. I'm not that kind of person. These beliefs feel like facts because they've been practiced for years, but they are not facts. They are choices you've made repeatedly, often without knowing it. The second Step is choosing a new assumption and committing to it. This is where most people hesitate. They wait for evidence before making the shift, but the law of assumption asks you to do the opposite. You declare the new identity first before there is proof. You live from it, think from it, feel from it, and act from it as if it is already true. When your consciousness consistently aligns with that new identity, the physical world has no choice but to reflect it. You don't need to know how the change will happen. You only need to know who you are now. I am confident. I am financially free. I am loved. These are not affirmations to recite mindlessly. They are assumptions to embody. When you say them, you are not begging for a result. You are announcing a truth. Over time, this truth becomes more than a belief. It becomes a state of being. This process requires trust. There will be moments when nothing seems to change. There will be times when the old world tempts you back into old identities. But if you understand that your consciousness is the only true cause, you can remain loyal to your new state, even in the absence of evidence. That loyalty is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Every time you hold the new assumption in your mind and heart, even for a moment longer than you used to, you are reshaping your energetic blueprint, and that blueprint is what reality must follow. You are never stuck because you are never truly limited by your circumstances. You are limited only by the identity you are assuming. Change the assumption and you change the self. Change the self and you change the life, not through force but through alignment, not through struggle but through presence. You don't chase the new world, you become the person who already lives in it, and the world comes to meet you. Their reality is not out to get you. It is not random, it is not delayed, it is obedient, and it is always listening to the state you are embodying most consistently. That is the invisible cause, and once you learn to master it, you become the master of your life. Chapter 3: Assumption versus Desire. Why wanting isn't enough. Desire is natural, it is part of being human. We want to love and be loved, to feel secure, to succeed, to express ourselves fully. There is nothing wrong with desire itself. In fact, it often acts as the spark for transformation. But for many people, desire becomes a permanent state of yearning. They want, they wish, they hope, yet they do not receive. They visualize, they script, they affirm, but nothing changes, and the reason is simple. They desire without assuming. Desire without assumption is powerless. It creates a longing, but not a result. A life filled with desire but empty of assumption becomes a cycle of frustration. You see what you want, but it always stays just out of reach. The law of assumption draws a clear distinction between desiring something and living from the belief that you already are or have it. Desire keeps your goal in the future, while assumption brings it into the now. To want something is to acknowledge you don't have it, and when that sense of lack becomes dominant, you keep attracting more evidence of not having. On the other hand, when you assume a thing to be yours already, you shift your internal state into one of fulfillment. That state is magnetic. It calls forth a new experience, not by force but by congruence. People often confuse wanting with believing. They say, I really want to be successful, but their inner state is one of doubt, unworthiness, or fear of failure. Their identity still holds the assumption that they are not yet enough, not yet ready, not yet deserving, so their actions, no matter how ambitious, are sabotaged by the identity they haven't yet shed. The outer results continue to mirror that inner truth. Life cannot give you what you deeply do not believe. You are aligned with it, isn't punishing you, it's following your lead. This is why many people work hard and get nowhere. They're driven by desire but anchored in assumptions of inadequacy. They keep trying to prove their worth by achieving more, yet internally they assume they are lacking. The law of assumption tells you to stop trying to achieve your way into a new identity. Instead, claim the new identity first. Assume it, live from it, let your actions be born from it, not aimed at earning it. The difference may seem subtle, but it is everything. Imagine two people chasing the same goal. One wants success and is constantly striving to prove they're good enough. The other assumes success is who they are and moves through the world with the calm certainty of someone who belongs at the top. Who do you think life responds to more effortlessly, the one who hustles from lack or the one who acts from fullness? The answer is obvious, and yet most people stay stuck in the first mode, believing more effort is the answer. It is an assumption. This is not to say desire is wrong. In fact, desire is a signal. It reveals what you're meant to claim, but you must not stop at the desire. You must move through it and become the version of yourself who no longer wants it, because they already live in the reality where it exists. To want love is one thing, to assume you are already loved, already lovable, already loving, that is what attracts real intimacy. To want money is common. To assume you are prosperous and capable and supported, that is what aligns you with opportunity. The assumption is what brings the desire from possibility to experience. People struggle with this because they are conditioned to believe that change must come from outside. They think once they get the job or find the partner or reach a certain amount in the bank, then they will feel secure, happy, or whole. But the truth is the opposite. You must feel secure, happy, and whole first. Then the circumstances that match that state begin to show up. The law of assumption demands you shift the cause of change from the outer to the inner. Instead of waiting for life to change your feelings, you use your feelings to change your life. This requires a willingness to be bold, to assume something before the evidence appears. Feels uncomfortable at first. Your logical mind will resist. It will tell you to wait for proof, to be realistic, to not get your hopes up. But this is not about being reckless. It's about reclaiming your creative power. When you move from desire to assumption, you stop living as someone who is decided. That decision shifts your energy, your posture, your tone of voice, the choices you make, and those subtle shifts create real change. You cannot live in the vibration of wanting and expect to receive the frequency of wanting and the frequency of having are not the same. Wanting says it's not here yet. Having says it is mine now. If you practice the feeling of having consistently enough, it begins to feel more natural than the feeling of lack. And when your dominant state is one of having, life will reflect that state in the form of outcomes, opportunities, and synchronicities. The gap between you and what you desire begins to close, not because you chased it, but because you became it. The great shift then is not in how much you want something, but in how deeply you can claim it as your truth. Now, not tomorrow, not someday. Now, even if the world hasn't caught up yet, you are not pretending, you are creating. And the moment you understand that, you move from being a victim of desire to a master of assumption. You stop wishing, you start becoming. Wanting is easy. Anyone can want, but few are willing to believe so deeply, so consistently, that they assume their dream is already real. Those who do are not dreamers, they are manifestors. They are creators of their own reality, and they don't need to chase outcomes because outcomes begin to chase them. Chapter 4: Identity is destiny. Who you believe you are determines everything, not just how you think, but how you feel, how you act, what you expect, and ultimately what you experience. Identity is the silent command behind every choice you make, and it is the most powerful assumption of all. You may desire success, love, or transformation, but if your identity is rooted in being unworthy, unlucky, or not enough, then life will continue to echo that back to you. Your identity is not just a reflection of the past, it is the blueprint that constructs your future. Until it changes, very little else truly can. Most people live unconsciously from a fixed identity. They have absorbed beliefs from childhood, culture, trauma, repetition, and failure, and they carry these beliefs like facts. If someone was made to feel like a burden growing up, they may unconsciously carry the identity of someone who must prove their worth through overwork or people-pleasing. If someone was repeatedly rejected, they may begin to assume they are undesirable, even in moments where they are loved. These identities are often invisible to the person living them, but they silently influence every area of life. It is not your circumstances that hold the most power over you. It is the story you tell about who you are within them. The law of assumption brings the focus back to where real change begins, within the self. It teaches that if you want to experience something new in your outer world, you must assume a new identity in your inner world, not gradually, not after the evidence shows up immediately. You must step into the identity of the version of you who already has what you desire. You begin to think their thoughts, feel their feelings, and make their choices, not because you're acting, but because you're aligning. This version of you is not a fantasy. It already exists as a potential. It is waiting for you to assume it. Most people try to change their behavior without changing their identity, which is why they so often fail. They start a new habit, but still see themselves as inconsistent. They begin a new relationship, but still assume they'll be abandoned. They launch a business, but continue to believe they're not the type of person who succeeds. Sooner or later, their behavior buckles under the weight of their unshifted identity. True transformation is not about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. When you change who you are at the core, your actions and results will follow with much less resistance. This is not about faking it or forcing it. It is about claiming it. The moment you choose a new identity and assume it as truth, you begin to shift on an energetic level. Your tone changes. Your posture shifts. The way you enter a room evolves. People pick up on it, sometimes without knowing why. You stop trying to convince the world to treat you differently and start treating yourself as someone who is already different. You don't beg for recognition. You carry the presence of someone who expects it. This shift cannot be taught. It must be lived. Identity is sticky because it is familiar. Even when the old version of you is causing pain or limitation, it still offers something that feels Safe. This is why people struggle to change. They try to move forward while still clinging to the assumptions of their past. The law of assumption challenges this directly. It does not ask for incremental progress. It invites a complete inner shift. It says become now, assume now, live from the end now, because identity is not built in the future. It is chosen in the present. To shift your identity, begin by observing how you speak to yourself and about yourself. The words I am are some of the most powerful you will ever use. They are declarations, not just descriptors. When you say I am always late, I am not good with money, or I am bad at relationships, you are not describing a moment, you are reinforcing an identity. The more you say it, think it, and believe it, the more evidence you collect to support it. But the same mechanism can be used in your favor. When you start saying I am disciplined, I am magnetic, I am a powerful creator, even before the proof arrives, you are planting seeds for a new version of yourself to emerge. The key is consistency. A single assumption once declared will begin to influence your energy, but when it is repeated and reinforced mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, it becomes a new default. It becomes who you are. Your job is not to convince others. Your job is to embody the identity until you no longer question it. At that point, the world must mirror it back. This is not arrogance. It is authority. It is stepping into your natural power to define yourself on your terms. There will be resistance. Your old self will try to pull you back with thoughts that say, this isn't you, this is fake, or you're going too far. But those voices are not truth. They are just echoes of the past. When you feel that resistance, it's a sign that you're on the edge of transformation. Do not retreat, press forward. Remind yourself that you are not your past experiences. You are the consciousness choosing this moment, and in this moment you are free to choose a new self. The world does not respond to what you want, it responds to who you are. If you are not assuming the identity of the person who already has what you desire, you are waiting. You are deferring your power to some future version of yourself. The law of assumption asks you to collapse that distance. To live the life you want, you must first become the person who lives it. Identity is not the result of what happens to you, it is the cause, and when you take ownership of it, destiny becomes less about chance and more about choice. Chapter 5: The Assumption Cycle. Thoughts, beliefs, results. There is a quiet loop running underneath every aspect of your life. It determines how you think, how you feel, how you react, and what you allow yourself to experience. It is not random, and it is not unique to you. It is a universal pattern known as the assumption cycle. At its core, the cycle begins with a thought, which when repeated becomes a belief, which then informs your behavior and perception, eventually producing a result. That result, once experienced, reinforces the original assumption, and the loop starts again, stronger than before. This cycle is responsible for the momentum of your life. If you assume that life is hard, that people can't be trusted, that success is rare, you will continue to generate experiences that validate those beliefs. You will unconsciously filter out evidence that contradicts them and hone in on anything that confirms them. This is not because your assumptions are objectively true, but because they shape the lens through which you interpret the world. Your thoughts guide your focus, your beliefs control your expectations, and your expectations influence the outcome. That outcome then feels like proof, further entrenching the original belief, and so the cycle continues to break free from unwanted patterns. You must first become aware of the assumptions you're living from. Most of them are subtle. They were formed in early life, perhaps through painful experiences, repeated messaging, or cultural conditioning. They became so familiar that they now operate in the background like software you forgot was running, but they are still shaping your world. A person who assumes they are not good enough will unconsciously attract relationships, jobs, or situations that affirm that identity, not because they want to suffer, but because their inner world insists on it. Their outer life must match the inner truth, even if that truth is painful. Awareness is the starting point, but it is not enough. Once you notice the loop, you must intervene. You must disrupt the thought before it becomes belief, or more powerfully, install a new belief before the old one can take hold again. This is where the law of assumption becomes transformative. It offers you a way to consciously replace the old loop with a new one. You begin by deliberately choosing a new assumption, not based on evidence, but based on desire. Then you repeat it until it becomes believable. Then you embody it until it becomes normal. Once it becomes normal, the world has no choice but to reflect it. This process can feel unnatural at first. Your current reality may not yet match your new assumption, and your senses will try to convince you it's not working. But that's the critical point in the cycle where most people quit. They wait for reality to validate the new belief before they fully commit to it, but assumption demands that you persist before the evidence arrives. This is not delusion, it's creative direction. You are telling the world through your inner conviction what to mirror back to you, and when you do this consistently, the cycle begins to reverse. The new thought leads to a new The belief informs new behavior invites new results, and the new result validates the new assumption, the same loop, but this time working in your favor. The real power of the assumption cycle lies in how it compounds over time. A single new thought may feel weak, but repeated daily, paired with emotion and reinforced by behavior, it begins to gather momentum. This is why identity shifts feel slow at first. You're rewiring a cycle that's been running for years, maybe decades, but the moment your new assumption becomes dominant, the loop accelerates. You start to expect better things, you walk differently, you speak differently, people respond differently, and suddenly your life begins to catch up to the version of yourself you chose to believe in. This is where most people realize the truth. They were never stuck because of their circumstances. They were stuck because of their loyalty to old assumptions. You cannot create a life of freedom while assuming you are limited. You cannot build lasting love while assuming you're unworthy. You cannot step into abundance while assuming money is always scarce. These beliefs are not harmless, they are scripts. They direct the unfolding of your life in ways that seem coincidental but are entirely orchestrated by the state you live in most consistently. There is nothing inherently difficult about shifting the cycle, but it requires one thing above all: persistence. You must be more loyal to the new assumption than to the evidence of the old. That means ignoring results that don't yet reflect your shift. That means holding the assumption even when your emotions waver. That means choosing your new self again and again until the world finally recognizes them. The results may seem delayed, but they are never denied. When the assumption is held firmly, they arrive on the timetable of your consistency. It is easy to underestimate the influence of your thoughts. They seem small, fleeting, insignificant, but a thought repeated becomes an identity, and identity sustained becomes a destiny. Every time you catch yourself thinking from an old state, one of lack, fear, or limitation, you have a choice. You can reinforce the past or assume the future, and every time you choose the latter, you chip away at the old cycle and feed the new one. The law of assumption is not about faking feelings or forcing positivity. It's about choosing alignment. It's about recognizing that you are always assuming something and that your life is always organizing itself around those assumptions. Once you understand that thoughts are not just mental noise but starting points of creation, you take back your power. You stop waiting for something outside of you to change and realize that change begins with the next assumption you decide to believe. There is no magic moment when everything clicks. There is only your willingness to assume now, to live from that assumption now, and to keep choosing it until the world no longer reflects who you were but who you decided to become. The cycle never stops running. The only question is, are you going to let it run unconsciously, or are you going to take the wheel? Chapter 6: The Inner Conversation Shaping Reality Through Self-Talk. There is a voice inside you that never stops speaking. You might not always hear it clearly, but it is always active, always commenting, always shaping your experience of the world. This voice is your inner conversation, and it is one of the most powerful tools you have, though most people let it run unconsciously. The quality of your life, your relationships, your success, and your self-image is directly influenced by the nature of that internal dialogue. If your inner conversation is one of limitation, doubt, judgment, and fear, then your external world will mirror those frequencies back to you. If your inner conversation is one of empowerment, certainty, and love, your world will begin to reflect that as well. The law of assumption hinges not just on what you believe in theory, but on what you say to yourself. When no one else is listening, you cannot assume a new version of yourself while continuing to have the same conversations in your mind. Your self-talk must reflect the identity you are choosing to embody. If you say, "I am successful," but your inner voice constantly tells you that you're falling behind, that you're not good enough, that you'll probably fail again, then the assumption of success never takes root. The contradiction between your stated intention and your mental narrative creates resistance. Your mind must be trained to speak from the new assumption, not about it. It is not enough to want change. You must give voice to the new you before anyone else sees them. This does not mean you silence every negative thought or become some artificial version of yourself. It means you become intentional about the internal dialogue you allow to guide your actions and decisions. Most inner conversations are on autopilot, shaped by old experiences, harsh criticism, or cultural programming. You hear the voice of a parent, a teacher, a bully, or a past failure whispering inside your head, and without realizing it, you start agreeing. You begin to treat yourself as though that voice is telling the truth. But just because a thought repeats doesn't mean it's accurate. Repetition is not evidence, it's just habit. To change your life, you must break that habit. You must install a new voice, one that speaks from your chosen identity. When you are manifesting abundance, your inner conversation must reflect abundance. You can't keep telling yourself you can't afford things, that you never get ahead, or that you're just not a money person. That kind of talk is not harmless, it's instructive. It instructs your subconscious mind to Keep operating from lack. The mind takes your self-talk as direction. It listens, it adapts, it complies. This is why self-talk is so critical. It is the daily rehearsal of your self-concept. If you want to become someone new, you have to speak to yourself like you already are that person, and not just once a day. When you're doing affirmations, you have to hold that tone throughout the day, especially when challenges arise. It's easy to speak confidently. When things are going well, the real shift happens. When you maintain empowering inner conversations in the face of doubt, discomfort, or setback, that is when the old voice tries to come back, and that is when you must consciously choose to replace it. This is not a passive process. It requires vigilance. You must become a witness to your thoughts and redirect them when necessary. When your mind starts repeating, "This isn't working," you respond, "It is working, because I've already become the person who receives this." When the thought arises, "I always mess things up," you counter with, "I am learning, growing, and showing up as my best self now." You are not arguing with yourself out of fear. You are replacing a lie with a new truth. Over time, the new voice becomes more familiar. It becomes the default. And when that happens, the assumption behind the voice becomes dominant. That's when the changes start to show up externally. Your inner voice not only shapes your self-immortal, but it also influences how others experience you. The way you carry yourself, the way you speak, and the energy you emit are all reflections of your internal dialogue. If your inner conversation is rooted in confidence, people feel that they respond to it. If your inner voice is full of doubt and self-judgment, that too is felt. Even if no words are spoken, people pick up on the frequency of your internal world. You can't fake your self-concept for long. It always reveals itself. This is why changing your inner conversation is not just about feeling better. It's about aligning yourself with a new identity so completely that it becomes real. You don't need the world to confirm it. First, you need to confirm it to yourself consistently every day. The law of assumption doesn't work because you repeat positive phrases. It works because you convince yourself of a new truth through repetition, emotional engagement, and behavioral alignment. When your inner world becomes consistent with the version of you that already has what you desire, the outer world follows. Start paying attention to the voice in your head, not just the loud thoughts, but the quiet ones that run underneath your actions. What does your mind say when you look in the mirror? What does it say when someone compliments you? What story does it tell when you fail or when things go well? These micro moments of self-talk are not random. They are the building blocks of your assumption. If they do not support the version of you that you are choosing to become, they must be changed. You have the power to change them. You do not have to wait for healing, approval, or a perfect environment. You can begin now by simply speaking differently to yourself, not as a performance but as a decision. Choose to be on your own side. Choose to speak as the version of yourself who has already crossed the threshold. Let your voice reflect that reality, and it will begin to shape your world from the inside out. Chapter 7: Living in the End. Dwelling in fulfillment before it arrives. There is a specific mental state that the law of assumption relies upon, one that determines whether your desires remain distant possibilities or become lived realities. That state is known as living in the end. It is not a metaphor or a vague mindset. It is a deliberate decision to mentally, emotionally, and energetically dwell in the state where your desire is already fulfilled. Living in the end means choosing to operate from the version of you who already has what they want, not the version of you who is trying to get it. It is about assuming the outcome is certain and allowing that certainty to shape your behavior, your focus, and your inner dialogue. Most people live from the middle, from the space between the desire and the manifestation. They wait, they wonder, they wish, and in doing so they remain disconnected from the version of themselves that would naturally produce the outcome they seek. To bridge that gap, you must mentally relocate. You must stop asking how or when and begin to live as though it is done. Living in the end does not mean faking it or pretending in a shallow way. It means embodying the emotional state and self-concept of the version of you who already has what they want. That means walking into situations with the confidence of someone who already succeeded. It means making choices with the clarity of someone who already knows they're supported. It means speaking about your life, even in your own mind, from a place of conclusion, not speculate. You are not hoping to arrive. You have already arrived, and now you are simply walking through the timeline that leads there. Most people resist this because they think it's unrealistic. They are trained to believe in what they can see, touch, and prove. So when they look at their current life and see no sign of the thing they want, they interpret that as a lack of possibility. But the law of assumption does not operate through visible evidence. It operates through internal alignment. The world around you is not the cause, it is the effect. Living in the end works because it shifts your identity. Now it bypasses waiting, it cancels delay, it brings the future into the present by assuming the outcome is already real. And when you consistently dwell in that state, the outer world eventually reflects it. It has no choice. The moment you assume something is already done, your energy changes. You no longer chase, you no longer grasp, you no longer send out signals of lack or desperation. Instead, you move with the assurance and poise of someone who knows that certainty becomes magnetic. People feel it, opportunities respond to it, life organizes around it, and it is not because you forced anything to happen, it is because you aligned your internal world with the version of you who already receives in that alignment. There is no resistance, there is only coherence between your desire and your assumption. This is why visualization and imagination are so powerful within the framework of assumption. When you vividly imagine yourself living the fulfilled version of your desire, not as a fantasy, but as a fact, you begin to reprogram your subconscious mind. Your nervous system starts to adjust to this new state. The brain does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is real. When you consistently dwell in a scene or a feeling where your wish is fulfilled, your body and mind start to behave as if it already is. This behavior leads to new decisions, new confidence, new actions, and new results. The change happens from within, not by accident, but by design. Many people make the mistake of oscillating between the end and the middle. They visualize one day, then worry the next. They affirm their new identity in the morning, then dwell in doubt by evening. This inconsistency weakens the assumption. It sends mixed signals to the subconscious, which then creates mixed results. The power is in the persistence to live. In the end, you must return to that fulfilled state again and again until it becomes natural. You are not visiting the future, you are inhabiting it. You are becoming so familiar with that version of life that it begins to feel more real than your current situation. Living in the end is not a denial of present circumstances, but a refusal to worship them. It means acknowledging where you are without giving it the final say. It means being aware of your current reality, but choosing to believe in something greater. You are not lying to yourself. You are speaking from the truth of your imagination, which is the creative faculty through which all change begins. The world you want exists first in your mind, and living in the end is the process of stepping into that world before it appears. There is a peace that comes with living in the end. The anxiety of when and how fades. The need to control disappears. You begin to trust, not in a passive way, but in a deeply empowered way. You no longer need constant reassurance because you are living from the place of knowing. Your actions become more effective. Your decisions become clearer. Your emotions stabilize. All of this happens because you are no longer living in the tension of desire. You are living in the satisfaction of fulfillment. This is where most manifestation efforts fail. People try to create new outcomes while living from old states. They try to manifest money while embodying lack. They try to attract love while assuming rejection. They try to heal while constantly scanning for symptoms. The law of assumption calls for a different approach. It invites you to dwell in the end now, not after things change, but in order to cause the change. You are not reacting to circumstances, you are selecting the state of consciousness from which all new circumstances are born. The only real question is, who would you be if it were already done? How would you feel? How would you walk, speak, decide, rest, trust, begin to live as that version of you, not as a performance, but as a return to the truth that this version already exists within you. You are not becoming them, you are revealing them. You are peeling away the layers of doubt and delay and choosing to live from the truth of fulfillment. Now, Chapter 8, Revision, rewriting the past to shape the future. The past is not as fixed as we have been led to believe. Most people think of the past as a concrete collection of events permanently recorded and immune to change, but the law of assumption offers a different perspective, one where the past is not a cause but a construct. It is not what happened that holds power over your life, but what you assume about what happened. Your interpretation of past experiences creates the filter through which you see yourself, others, and the future, and since assumptions shape reality, then your past, when revised in consciousness, can release its grip and create a different trajectory for your life. Revision is the practice of deliberately changing your memory of a past event in order to assume a new outcome, identity, or emotional response. This does not mean lying to yourself or pretending that events never occurred. It means choosing to assign a new meaning, a new perspective, or a new emotional tone to something that previously created pain, limitation, or fear, because the subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is physically real and what is vividly imagined. Revision becomes a powerful tool for inner transformation, and when the inner changes, the outer eventually follows. Many people carry emotional residue from experiences that happened years, even decades ago. A moment of rejection becomes a Lifelong assumption of unworthiness. A single failure becomes a recurring fear of inadequacy. A painful breakup becomes an expectation of betrayal. These events do not continue to affect them because of what happened but because of what they assumed in response, and unless those assumptions are revised, the patterns will repeat. New people, new places, and new opportunities will continue to mirror the same old belief that they are not enough, not safe, not loved, not capable. Revision breaks this cycle by rewriting the source material. To revise the past is to go back in imagination to a moment that still holds emotional charge and change the outcome in your mind. You don't do this to deceive yourself, but to liberate yourself. For example, if you were humiliated in a public setting and still carry the assumption that you are not good in social situations, you would revisit that moment and imagine it going differently. You would see yourself speaking with clarity, receiving appreciation, and walking away with confidence. You would feel the new emotions as if they were real. You would repeat this scene in your imagination until it becomes more familiar than the original version. Over time, the nervous system adjusts, the subconscious mind rewrites the script, and the assumption begins to shift. Revision is not only for major traumas, it can be used for everyday moments that accumulate into larger beliefs. A conversation that left you feeling dismissed, a missed opportunity that sparked regret, an argument that caused guilt or shame. These moments often go unexamined, yet they quietly contribute to your self-concept. When you revise them, you're not trying to escape reality, you're choosing to no longer carry the emotional and energetic weight of a version of events that does not serve your growth. You are stepping into your power as the author of your own narrative. One of the most misunderstood aspects of revision is the belief that the past must be left alone. People fear that rewriting it will mean invalidating their pain or dishonoring the truth, but revision does not dishonor the past, it redeems it. It reclaims your authorship. It does not erase lessons or deny experiences, it simply refuses to let them continue to shape your identity in destructive ways. You can acknowledge what happened while still choosing to assign a new meaning, one that supports who you are becoming rather than who you were. It is important to remember that memory is malleable. Studies in neuroscience confirm that every time we recall a memory, we alter it slightly. It becomes less a recording and more a reconstruction. If you are already reconstructing your memories unconsciously, why not do it deliberately? Why not choose a version that empowers you instead of one that defines you by limitation? This is what makes revision such a profound act of self-healing. It does not require anyone else to change or apologize. It does not wait for justice or validation. It is entirely within your control, available at any moment, and capable of shifting your state in ways that years of effort sometimes cannot. When practiced consistently, revision begins to alter the way you view your entire life story. You start to see yourself not as a victim of circumstances, but as the conscious creator of meaning. You realize that your story is not over, and that even the most painful chapters can be rewritten into sources of strength, clarity, and direction. This is not idealism, it is agency. You are not denying reality, you are asserting your authority to define what reality means for you. The effects of revision may begin subtly. You notice that a certain trigger no longer activates the same emotion. You catch yourself speaking about the past with less bitterness or fear. You find yourself making new choices where you once felt stuck, and then, often without realizing it, the outer world begins to change. You attract different people, you respond differently to challenges, you find yourself in situations that contradict your old narrative and confirm the new one. The change did not begin in the outer world, it began in the privacy of your imagination. This is the power of assumption. When you revise the past in consciousness, you assume a new truth, and life adjusts. You are not bound by what was, you are shaped by what you believe now. And if what you believe now is that you are whole, worthy, powerful, and chosen, then the world will rise to meet you in that belief. Chapter 9. Emotional assumption. Feeling it. Real emotion is the engine of assumption. While thoughts form the framework of what we believe, emotion gives those beliefs life. Without emotional engagement, assumptions remain shallow, fragile ideas that dissolve under pressure. But when a thought is infused with emotion, it becomes magnetic. It pulls experiences, people, and circumstances into alignment with itself. This is why some people can repeat affirmations endlessly and see no change. They speak words of power, but those words are empty of feeling. The mind may be trying to assume a new identity, but the body is still loyal to the emotional signature of the old self. The law of assumption does not respond to intellectual repetition alone, it responds to what you feel as real. To feel something as real is to enter into a state where your emotions reflect the reality you desire, not the circumstances you currently observe. You begin to inhabit the feeling space of your desired outcome. You feel the peace, the pride, the joy, the love, the confidence, as if the Desire has already manifested. This emotional state is not a reaction to an event, it becomes the cause of it. You are no longer responding to life, you are instructing it. When you consistently generate and sustain the emotion that matches your desired reality, you collapse the timeline between desire and manifestation. You are not waiting for something to happen to feel a certain way, you are choosing to feel it now, and in doing so you invite it to happen. Most people do the opposite. They say they will feel secure when they have the money, happy when they find the relationship, or confident when they achieve the goal, but this postpones the feeling, which delays the result. If you believe you need the condition to feel the emotion, you become a prisoner of circumstance. But if you reverse the equation and generate the emotion first, you activate a powerful feedback loop. The emotion becomes an assumption. If I feel this way now, it must mean I already am that person or already have that thing. That assumption, held with conviction, begins to reshape your outer experience. Emotion is the language of the subconscious mind. You can try to program your subconscious with logic, but it will resist. The subconscious is not moved by what is reasonable, it is moved by what is deeply felt. When you feel and experience deeply, whether positive or negative, it becomes encoded in your nervous system. This is why trauma has such lasting effects. It imprints the body with a felt experience of danger, shame, or powerlessness, but the same mechanism can be used to heal. You can imprint the body with new emotions: safety, love, abundance, empowerment. These new emotions become new assumptions, and over time they become new identities to use. Emotional assumption. Effectively, you must become sensitive to your emotional state and willing to generate feeling independent of circumstance. This is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. You might begin by asking yourself each day, how would I feel if my desire were already fulfilled? Then you take time to generate that feeling. You breathe into it, you let it rise, you imagine scenes that bring it to life. You allow your body to experience the emotion fully, even if only for a few minutes. Those minutes matter more than hours of passive wishing. One moment of genuine emotional alignment carries more creative power than 100 hollow affirmations. This practice may feel strange at first, especially if your current reality seems far from your desired one, but that discomfort is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that you're breaking out of an old state. The mind will resist. It will tell you it's foolish to feel happy. When nothing has changed, it will want to return to the familiar emotions of lack or doubt. But this is the test. If you are not responding to the old world, you are creating the new one. You are not feeling because of what is, you are feeling because of what you choose to assume is already true, and with repetition your nervous system begins to accept the new emotion as normal. It becomes your new set point. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate emotional assumption is through imaginal scenes. These are not vague daydreams, but vivid, emotionally charged experiences you create in your mind where your desire is already fulfilled. You see the result, but more importantly, you feel it. You involve the senses, you engage the heart, you let the imagined scene become so alive that it feels more real than your current environment. When you do this consistently, the subconscious accepts the scene as fact, and the body begins to act in accordance with it. Your behavior changes, your expectations shift, your energy becomes congruent with your desire, and soon life begins to respond in kind. This emotional alignment must be sustained, not constantly but consistently. You return to it throughout the day. You check in with your emotional state and ask, am I feeling from the end or from the lack? If you find yourself slipping into fear or doubt, you do not panic. You simply return. You choose again. You re-enter the state of the wish fulfilled. You reconnect with the emotion that reflects your chosen reality. This is the work, not to be perfect but to be persistent, not to control every thought but to prioritize the emotional frequency that matches your assumption. When you make this a way of life, your emotional world becomes your creative engine. You are no longer driven by reaction. You are no longer at the mercy of conditions. You become the cause. You choose the emotion. You assume the outcome. You feel it real, and life begins to reorganize itself around your inner state. Chapter 10: Faith without proof. Trusting the unseen. Faith is the silent force behind every successful assumption. It is not blind optimism or wishful thinking. It is the deep, unwavering inner certainty that what you have assumed to be true will manifest regardless of whether there is any evidence yet. Faith is the choice to trust the unseen over the visible, the inner reality over the outer conditions. It is the glue that holds your new identity in place while the world catches up. Without faith, your assumptions collapse under the weight of what your senses report. With faith, you persist in your vision until the assumption hardens into fact. Most People live by proof. They believe something only after they see it, touch it, or experience it through their five senses, but manifestation through assumption does not work that way. You must first believe. Without seeing, you must walk as the person who already has the thing, even when nothing outside of you confirms it. This is difficult for many because it requires going against the grain of what the world teaches. We are conditioned to trust logic, data, and past experience, but the law of assumption asks you to trust something deeper, your inner knowing, your chosen identity, your assumption. You are not being asked to ignore reality. You are being asked to refuse to let it dictate who you are becoming. This is where most people fail. They start with a new assumption. They visualize, they feel the end, they speak with confidence, but then they look around and nothing seems to be changing. The money isn't there, the person doesn't call, the job doesn't materialize, and so they retreat, they doubt, they cancel their assumption and fall back into the old state. They believe the lack of proof means the assumption was false, but the truth is the lack of proof is simply the lag between assumption and manifestation. It is not evidence of failure, it is the testing ground of faith. Faith without proof means you hold to your vision, even when your senses scream the opposite. It means you choose to stay loyal to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even when the world seems stuck. This is not easy, but it is essential. The delay between assumption and physical evidence is where most people give up. They believe that the delay means the process isn't working, but in truth, the delay is natural. It is the time it takes for reality to reshape itself around your new identity. Your only job during this period is to persist, to remain internally convinced, to refuse to let external appearances override your internal assumption. It is in this space, this gap between assumption and manifestation, that your true power is forged. Anyone can feel confident when everything is going well, but the person who maintains their belief in the unseen, who holds their state when everything around them remains the same, is the one who bends reality. This kind of faith isn't passive. It is not just sitting around waiting for things to change. It is active, steady, and creative. It is a commitment to the unseen version of your life that you know exists even if no one else can see it. Faith does not mean you will never feel doubt. Doubt may visit, but faith means you do not let it move in you. Feel it, acknowledge it, and return to your assumption. You remind yourself that outer reality is slow to catch up, but it must catch up. You remember that everything you now take for granted was once unseen. The phone in your hand, the home you live in, the relationships you hold dear, all of it was once nothing more than an idea, and now it is real. It is the same with your desires. They are not distant wishes, they are future facts waiting to be claimed. Holding faith without proof is a discipline. It requires managing your inner state with care. You learn to feed your belief with imaginable scenes, with the feeling of fulfillment, with conversations that align with your desired outcome. You learn to withdraw your attention from appearances that contradict your vision. You do not fight them, deny them, or obsess over them. You simply do not give them your energy. Your focus remains on the assumption. You live in the end internally, even as the beginning still unfolds externally. This is where assumption becomes more than a technique. It becomes a way of being. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are defining yourself from within and allowing the world to conform. Faith without proof is not stubbornness or delusion. It is mastery. It is the decision to live as cause, not effect. It is the willingness to bet on your inner reality even when no one else sees what you see, and it is this kind of belief that moves mountains. As you build your capacity for faith, you begin to feel less anxious about time. You stop measuring progress by outer signs. You stop checking every 5 minutes to see if it's working. You know that it is. You know that the assumption once accepted as true must express itself. This knowing is not loud or flashy. It is quiet, firm, and unshakable. You become less concerned with how things will unfold and more focused on staying in the state of being where the desire is already realized. This inner shift changes everything. You are no longer desperate, impatient, or fearful. You are calm, steady, and clear. You walk through your days with a sense of inevitability. You trust the process not because you see the results, but because you have become the person who receives them. That is the true purpose of faith. It is not to manipulate the world. It is to stabilize your inner world so that the outer has no choice but to match. Faith without proof is the final step between assumption and reality. It is the bridge you must cross alone, but once you cross it, the evidence comes, the world shifts, the results appear, and what was once invisible becomes undeniable. Chapter 11, Self-Concept. Rewired from scarcity to abundance. There is a hidden framework beneath every decision you make, every belief you hold, and every outcome you experience. That framework is your self-concept, the identity you have accepted as true about who you are. It is not just what you think of yourself on the surface, but what you assume about your worth, your capabilities, your deservingness, and your place in the world. If the self-concept is rooted in scarcity, no amount of surface-level effort will lead to lasting abundance. You may make progress, but you will find ways to sabotage or shrink yourself back into alignment with your inner definition. Real transformation begins with the decision to rewire your self-concept and move from a consciousness of lack into one of sufficiency, wholeness, and plenty. A scarcity self-concept is not always loud. It doesn't always show up as desperate or panicked. Sometimes it hides behind modesty, humility, or the belief that playing small is somehow more virtuous or safe. It whispers things like, "I shouldn't want too much, I'm not the kind of person who gets that," or "people like me don't go that far." These thoughts may seem harmless, even responsible, but they are assumptions, and assumptions create pattern. When you live from a limited self-concept, you unconsciously attract experiences that match those limits. You settle, you delay, you defer your power to circumstances. You walk into rooms half-embodied, unsure if you belong. You make yourself smaller, even when the opportunity is wide open. The law of assumption brings you face to face with the truth that life is not responding to what you desire. It is responding to who you believe you are. The version of you who still sees themselves as someone who must earn love, prove worth, or fight for every bit of success will continue to live in a world where those dynamics are reflected. On the other hand, the version of you who assumes they are already enough, already deserving, already abundant will begin to experience a very different kind of reality. The shift is not in the outer world, it is in the state of being you consistently occupy. Rewiring your self-concept begins with observation. You must be willing to listen to your own internal dialogue without judgment. What do you assume about yourself? When you fail, what do you believe about your worth? When you're not performing, pleasing, or achieving, how do you respond? When someone offers you praise, support, or love, these moments reveal the underlying assumptions that make up your self-concept. If your automatic response is discomfort, deflection, or disbelief, then your self-concept has been shaped by scarcity. It believes you must earn everything, that nothing is guaranteed, that you are always on the verge of losing what you have to move into abundance. You must choose a new narrative, not based on evidence, but on identity. You begin by assuming that you are already the kind of person who is worthy of the life you desire, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. You are not auditioning, you are arriving. You are not waiting to be chosen, you are choosing yourself. This assumption must become the foundation you return to over and over, especially when the old narrative resurfaces. Scarcity will try to reassert itself. It will whisper, "Who do you think you are?" And your job is to answer not with doubt, but with clarity. "I am someone who is supported, worthy, capable, and abundant." You do not argue with the old self, you outgrow it. As this new self-concept takes root, you begin to notice changes. You speak differently, you take up more space, not with arrogance, but with presence. You no longer tolerate environments, relationships, or habits that reflect the old identity. You stop explaining yourself, over-apologizing, or shrinking your vision. You make choices from alignment, not fear. This is not about pretending to be better than you are, it is about remembering who you truly are. Beneath the conditioning, you are not here to survive, you are here to thrive. Abundance is not just about money or possessions, it is a state of mind, a way of being. It is the assumption that there is more than enough time, energy, opportunity, support, love, and that you are allowed to receive it without guilt or struggle. An abundant self-concept says, "I don't have to hoard, compete, or prove, I am already enough." And life responds to that. It does not mean you never work hard or face challenges. It means your foundation is secure. You no longer operate from fear of loss, but from the certainty of provision. You do not assume that life is a battle, you assume it is a mirror, and as you shift your inner world, the outer must reflect it. This shift may not be instant, but it is always available. You can choose it now, and you can choose it again tomorrow. With every assumption, you are either reinforcing scarcity or installing abundance. With every thought, you are either affirming limitation or declaring freedom. Your self-concept is not fixed, it is fluid, responsive, and deeply influenced by what you repeat to yourself, what you feel about yourself, and what you allow yourself to receive. The more you live from the new identity, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it stops feeling like something you're trying to become and starts feeling like who you've always been. You do not need permission to believe in your worth. You do not need proof to act from abundance. You only need a decision to rewire your self-concept with intention and persist until it becomes real, and it will become real because everything in your life must eventually match the assumption you hold most consistently. Chapter 12: Letting Go of the Old You. Transformation cannot occur without release. As long as you carry the identity of who you used to be, you will continue to relieve the same patterns, attract the same outcomes, and experience the same limitations. Letting go of the old you is not an act of abandonment, it is an act of liberation. It is a conscious decision to stop identifying with the version of yourself shaped by fear, failure, scarcity, rejection, or anything else that has weighed you down and kept you small. That version of you served a purpose. It helped you survive, adapt, navigate the past, but it cannot take you where you are going. The law of assumption demands that you make space for the new identity by releasing your attachment to the old one. Letting go does not mean erasing your history or pretending past pain never existed. It means no longer allowing that history to define you. It means no longer using your past as proof of what is possible. It means recognizing that what happened may explain certain patterns, but it does not justify continuing them. The truth is, most people live as a collection of past memories they replay. Moments of failure or embarrassment wear them like a badge and make choices through the lens of old wounds. Their identity becomes frozen in time, shaped by experiences that no longer exist except in their minds. They are not choosing the present, they are recycling the past. The law of assumption gives you the authority to choose again. It tells you that your reality is not bound to who you have been but to who you are now assuming yourself to be. However, assuming a new self requires the willingness to release the comfort of the familiar, and that is often the hardest part. Even when the old self is painful, it is predictable. You know how it feels to doubt yourself. You know the rhythm of playing it safe. You know the cycle of hoping, hesitating, then retreating. These patterns, while limiting, have become home. Letting go of the old you means stepping into unfamiliar territory where you no longer rely on past identity to guide your choices. This is not an intellectual decision, it is an emotional process. You must allow yourself to grieve the old self. You must mourn the version of you that never felt seen, the one who carried shame, the one who always tried to be good enough. You don't push them away with judgment. You thank them. You acknowledge their effort, their resilience, their desire to protect you. Then you tell them it's time to rest because you are no longer operating from survival. You are choosing creation, and creation requires space that is no longer occupied by outdated assumptions about who you are. The old you will try to return. They will show up in your inner dialogue in moments of doubt, in the temptation to shrink back into familiar patterns. This is not failure, this is memory. The body remembers how it used to feel, the mind remembers how it used to think, but those memories are not instructions. You are not obligated to act from them. Each time you catch yourself slipping into the old identity, you redirect. You say, "That's who I used to be, not who I am now." And then you return to the assumption that reflects your chosen self. This is how you rewire your identity, not through force, but through decision and repetition. You keep choosing the new version. You keep assuming the state of the person who has already released the weight of the past. You stop explaining your limitations to others. You stop defending your old beliefs. You stop telling stories that keep you anchored in scarcity, insecurity, or pain. Those stories may be true, but they are no longer useful. You are not denying your past, you are choosing not to relive it. Letting go also means detaching from the need to fix the old you. Many people delay their transformation because they believe they must fully heal, fully understand, or fully redeem their past before stepping into something new. But healing is not a prerequisite for identity shift. Often it is the shift that creates the healing. When you stop identifying as broken, you stop recreating the conditions that keep you stuck. When you stop viewing yourself as someone who always struggles, you stop choosing experiences that confirm that struggle. The assumption is what initiates the change, not the other way around. This is where courage comes in, because letting go of the old you means entering a space where there is no roadmap, no proof, and no past reference. You are choosing to define yourself in a way that may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You are walking into a new version of your life before the evidence has arrived. This discomfort is not a sign you're doing it wrong, it is a sign that you're evolving. The old self will resist. They will try to keep you small, not out of malice, but out of habit. Your job is not to fight them, your job is to stop following them. You lead now, you decide, and the decision is simple, even if not easy. Are you going to keep living as the version of yourself shaped by old assumptions, or are you going to assume a new identity, one that reflects who you truly are and who you are becoming? The world will not give you permission. That permission must come from you. As you let go, you will begin to notice that life responds differently. People treat you differently, you think differently, you no longer anticipate disappointment, you no longer wait for the worst, you move with a calm confidence of someone who knows who they are. You are not trying to prove or perform, you are simply aligned, and in that alignment the old self fades, not because you destroyed them, but because you outgrew them. Letting go of the old you is not a single moment, it is a practice, a continual decision to stop rehearsing the past and start rehearsing your future. The past will knock, the patterns will whisper, but each time you choose differently, you build the bridge between who you were and who you truly are. You are not here to relive the story, you are here to rewrite it. Chapter 13, Assuming Wealth. Wealth is not only about numbers in a bank account or the material possessions a person holds. At its core, wealth is a state of consciousness, a way of relating to life, a set of assumptions about what is available, what is possible, and what you deserve. People who live in wealth are not necessarily smarter, luckier, or more talented. Often they simply assume wealth is their natural state. They assume they are worthy of receiving, capable of creating, and safe to have more than enough. Those assumptions become the filters through which they perceive opportunities, make decisions, and respond to challenges. The law of assumption teaches that to have wealth you must first assume the identity of someone who already has it. Not someday, not when the paycheck clears, not when the business grows. But now most people are trained from a young age to think from scarcity. They grow up hearing that money is hard to get, that it doesn't grow on trees, that rich people are greedy, or that financial success requires struggle and sacrifice. These messages are absorbed as truth and become part of the person's subconscious identity. Without even realizing it, they carry assumptions like, "I'm just not good with money, there's never enough," or "people like me don't get rich." These are not facts, they are beliefs disguised as facts, and those beliefs silently direct the person's experience with money, no matter how much they try to override them with hard work or positive thinking. To assume wealth, you must first become aware of your existing assumptions. How do you feel when you receive money? Do you brace for it to disappear? Do you feel guilt for having more than others? Do you rush to spend it as soon as you get it? These reactions point to deeper beliefs, perhaps that you're not worthy of holding wealth, or that you fear judgment for having it, or that you expect it to leave because that's what it's always done. These beliefs cannot be shifted through logic alone. They must be replaced by a new identity, one rooted in the quiet, steady confidence that you are someone who lives in financial ease. This does not mean pretending to be wealthy or making reckless choices to force an illusion. It means reconditioning your inner world to reflect the emotional and energetic state of someone who lives in abundance. When you assume wealth, you no longer see money as scarce or elusive. You view it as responsive, plentiful, and natural. You stop chasing it and begin attracting it. You stop begging for it and start aligning with it. You treat yourself with the respect of someone who knows they are provided for. Your decisions shift, not because you have more, but because you trust that more is always coming. Assuming wealth is not about acting rich, it is about thinking, feeling, and choosing from a place of financial well-being regardless of your current bank balance. That means you stop making decisions based on fear of not having enough and start making them based on the version of you who always has enough. It means speaking about money with appreciation instead of anxiety. It means changing the inner script from "I can't afford that" to "I choose where my money goes." It means expecting money to come, to stay, to grow, and to serve, not because you're forcing it, but because you've assumed that's simply how your life works now. The shift to assuming wealth often starts with small internal changes. You begin to notice where you used to shrink, stress, or settle, and you choose differently. You pause before reacting to a bill or an unexpected expense and ask, "What would the abundant version of me believe right now?" You find peace in the answer, even if the numbers haven't changed yet. This kind of mental training rewires your nervous system. It calms the survival responses that kept you stuck in cycles of panic and hustle. It creates space for better decisions, more clarity, and increased receptivity. You are no longer pushing against lack, you are aligning with wealth. Wealth is not only about receiving, it's about how you hold what you receive. Many people sabotage financial breakthroughs because their identity has not expanded to match the new level. They spend it quickly, hide it, or fear it will disappear. This is not a money problem, it's an identity problem. The assumption is still rooted in "this isn't really mine" or "this can't last." To live in sustained wealth, you must assume that holding and multiplying money is natural to you. You must believe you are a responsible steward, not out of pressure, but out of trust in yourself. The person who assumes wealth does not fear its presence or its absence. They no money comes and goes, but their source remains stable. You don't have to wait for a financial miracle to begin living from the energy of abundance. You can start with how you treat what you already have. You can practice gratitude for the smallest transaction. You can carry yourself with the posture of someone who trusts the flow of life. You can let go of envy, comparison, and shame, and begin to assume that your path is uniquely supported. Wealth is not a reward for hard work, it is a reflection of alignment. When you assume wealth, your subconscious no longer blocks it with fear or guilt. You give yourself permission to rise. This assumption must be maintained even in the face of temporary setbacks. You may have bills, debts, or obligations that challenge your belief, but these are not signs that the assumption is false. They are echoes of past beliefs still playing out. Your job is to remain steady in your new identity. You are not ignoring reality, you are choosing to live from a higher one. And as you do, the old conditions begin to shift, money begins to respond differently, opportunities appear, clients, contracts, ideas, support all begin to form around the energy you have chosen to hold. Assuming wealth is not about appearances, it is about truth, it is about declaring, I am someone who is always supported, money flows to me easily, I live in overflow, I am trusted with more because I trust myself with more. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. You are not trying to impress anyone, you are impressing this truth upon your subconscious until it becomes your reality. Chapter 14. Assuming love. Love is not something you chase, earn, or stumble upon by accident. It is something you assume. This may sound bold or even delusional to someone who has experienced a long history of loneliness, heartbreak, or unworthiness, but the law of assumption does not bend to emotional patterns or painful memories. It simply reflects what you believe about yourself and the world. If you assume that love is rare, that it slips away, that it always hurts, or that it's not for people like you, then life will continue to confirm those beliefs. If instead you begin to assume that love is natural, safe, abundant, and inevitable, then the way you show up in the world shifts, and so do your experiences. Most people enter the realm of love and relationships burdened with assumptions they don't even know they carry. They walk around with wounds from past betrayals, subconscious beliefs inherited from watching dysfunctional relationships, and a sense of identity built around being unwanted, unchosen, or never quite enough. These assumptions form the energetic blueprint through which they interact with others. They become hypervigilant, overly accommodating, emotionally distant, or anxiously attached, not because they want to be, but because they're trying to avoid a repeat of the past. But avoidance is still a form of assumption. When you assume that pain is inevitable, even your protective behavior works against you. To truly shift your experience of love, you must start with the assumption that you are lovable as you are, not as you might become. After healing, changing, or proving something, you must begin to assume that being chosen is not a miracle, it is a reflection of your natural worth, that relationships don't have to be dramatic, one-sided, or fleeting, that love can be consistent, deep, joyful, and safe. This assumption is not a wish or a fantasy, it is a decision, and the moment you begin to feel from that state, speak from that state, and think from that state, you start to change your magnetism. Your energy shifts. When you assume love, you stop chasing people, you stop auditioning for affection, you stop interpreting silence as rejection and presence as proof. You are no longer obsessed with outcomes because you no longer doubt your worth. You are not looking for love to save you, complete you, or make you valuable. You are meeting love as someone who already knows they are whole. This doesn't make you cold or distant, it makes you ground. You become less reactive, more open, more generous, because you are not trying to protect a wound, you are expressing a truth. Assuming love is not about convincing someone else to love you, it is about becoming the version of you who is already loved. That version walks differently, they speak with ease, they make decisions not from fear of being left but from trust in their own value. They do not beg, bargain, or settle. They do not interpret being single as failure or a relationship as success. Their state is not dependent on another person, it is a constant because they've assumed it as their truth. This assumption influences how you choose partners, how you communicate, how you set boundaries, and how you receive affection. When you believe you are loved, you stop tolerating crumbs, you stop repeating the cycle of fixing others to feel worthy, you stop giving love in hopes of earning it in return. You begin to give from overflow, not from emptiness, and when you receive, you do not shrink or deflect. You welcome love because it feels natural, not foreign. The process of assuming love may stir up discomfort at first, especially if your past experiences are full of abandonment, neglect, or betrayal. The old self will try to remind you of all the reasons you are not lovable, all the mistakes you've made, all the times it didn't work out, but those memories are not your destiny, they are echoes of a version of you who didn't know how powerful your assumptions were. You don't need to heal everything before you begin. You only need to stop reinforcing the assumption that you are broken. The real healing happens when you stop waiting to be loved and start assuming that you already are. This assumption does not depend on having someone in your life. You do not need a partner to prove that you are loved. The outer relationship will reflect the inner state, not the other way around. If you try to manifest love while still feeling unworthy, you will manifest someone who confirms that unworthiness. If you assume you are already loved, already chosen, already worthy, you will attract someone who meets you at that level. You cannot fake it. The energy you carry is what speaks the loudest. This does not mean you walk around pretending to be in love with someone who doesn't exist. It means you feel the state of being loved so deeply that you no longer need external validation. You let that Feeling become your norm, you let it guide your choices, you let it soothe your nervous system, you let it remind you that love is not something you perform for, it is something you are. You may begin this process alone, but you will not remain that way. Life responds to your assumptions, and once the state of being loved becomes your default, love will appear not as a surprise but as a match. The relationship will not complete you, it will reflect you, and that is the difference between love based on lack and love based on abundance. The most powerful love is not the one that finds you, it is the one you decide to embody before it arrives, because once you become love, once you assume it is your nature and your reality, the world cannot help but mirror it back. Chapter 15. Assuming health. Health is more than the absence of illness, it is a state of balance, energy, strength, and aliveness. While the physical body operates under biological systems and scientific principles, the law of assumption teaches that consciousness is the true source of all expression, including the condition of the body. Your assumptions about your health, your vitality, your resilience, and your body's ability to heal all shape how you feel, how you function, and how your body responds to internal and external conditions. To assume health is not to ignore pain or pretend illness does not exist. It is to choose a state of consciousness that affirms wellness as your natural baseline and to live in that awareness consistently until the body begins to reflect it. Most people approach health from a reactive standpoint. They wait for symptoms before they care for themselves. They assume health is fragile, unreliable, or temporary. They believe they are at the mercy of genetics, age, environment, or chance. These beliefs, though widely accepted, are still assumptions, and because they are assumed as truth, they become lived reality. A person who constantly worries about getting sick often finds themselves battling one illness after another. A person who constantly speaks of their declining energy, aches, or fear of disease begins to embody the very decline they fear. It is not because their words alone have power, but because those words reflect a deeper state of belief, and belief is what the subconscious listens to most closely. To shift into the assumption of health, you must first identify the beliefs you hold about your body. Do you trust it? Do you expect it to support you, recover quickly, and feel strong? Or do you believe it is unpredictable, weak, or working against you? Every assumption becomes instruction. If you constantly tell yourself, even silently, that your body is aging badly, that you've never been the healthy type, that you'll probably inherit the family diagnosis, you are reinforcing a state of being that your body will do its best to fulfill, not because the body wants to suffer, but because it is a reflection of the dominant consciousness you hold. The law of assumption does not ignore medical science, it works alongside it by influencing the energetic and emotional environment in which healing occurs. There is an entire field of study exploring the placebo effect, where people improve or heal simply because they believe they will. This is not random magic, it is evidence of the power of assumed belief. When you assume you are getting better, your body often responds. When you assume your immune system is strong, your stress levels reduce and your natural defenses improve. When you assume you are whole, you begin to feel whole. To assume health, you begin by speaking to your body not with fear, but with respect. You stop rehearsing illness and start rehearsing vitality. You wake up in the morning and declare, not as a wish, but as a fact, that you are strong, capable, and energized. You do not argue with symptoms or deny discomfort, but you refuse to let those sensations define your state. You say, "This is temporary, I am returning to balance, my body knows what to do, I trust it." These statements, repeated with feeling and consistency, begin to alter the narrative you hold about your physical experience. You must become familiar with the emotional state of wellness. Most people know what it feels like to be tired, stressed, or in pain. Fewer people practice the feeling of being vibrant, energized, and light. Your body responds not only to food, sleep, and movement, it responds to emotion. Emotions like joy, peace, gratitude, and ease activate the body's healing mechanisms. They regulate hormones, reduce inflammation, and support cellular repair. When you assume health, you are not only shifting your mental state, but creating the internal conditions where healing is more likely to occur. It's important to note that assuming health is not the same as blaming yourself for illness. This is not about guilt or shame. Life is complex. The body is complex. Pain and sickness are real experiences, and many people suffer despite doing everything right. But the law of assumption is not here to judge, it is here to empower it. Feel safe. The key to handling doubt is not to argue with it or suppress it. That only makes it stronger. Instead, observe it, let it rise without reacting. Recognize it for what it is: residue of the old self, echoes of a belief system you are leaving behind. When you see doubt not as truth, but as a habitual response, it loses its grip. You can acknowledge it without inviting it to stay. You say to yourself, "Yes, doubt is here, but I choose to remain in the state of the end." You do not fight with it, you simply continue to assume the truth of your vision regardless. Delay is often misunderstood. People believe that if something takes time it must not be meant for them or that they are doing something wrong, but delay is not denial, it is not punishment, it is often alignment in motion. Reality takes time to catch up to a fully embodied assumption. The deeper your previous identity was ingrained, the more time it may take for the outer world to shift. This is not because the universe is slow or stubborn, it is because you are being stretched to remain faithful. You are being given space to anchor your assumption so deeply that nothing external can shake it. Most people are trained to expect instant gratification. If something doesn't happen quickly, they assume it's a sign to quit, but assumption is not about speed, it is about certainty. It is about holding the inner reality so firmly that the passage of time becomes irrelevant. You are not watching the clock, you are not measuring the gap, you are living as if the outcome is done no matter how long it takes to arrive. When you stop obsessing over how long it's taking, you often speed up the process because you remove the resistance created by impatience. Both doubt and delay challenge your willingness to persist without evidence. They strip away the need for external validation and invite you to build an inner foundation that cannot be moved. This is the real work of assumption, not in the moments when things are going well, but in the moments when everything seems still. You hold your state, you remain loyal to your vision, you walk through your day as if what you want is already yours. You stop looking for signs and start being the sign. You stop needing proof and become the proof. This does not mean you never feel frustration or disappointment. You are human and emotions will come, but you do not dwell there. You return again and again to the assumption. You remind yourself of your power. You recall how reality has always responded to your dominant beliefs. You look back and realize that everything that ever became real in your life began as an unseen conviction. This time is no different. The gap between desire and manifestation is simply the space where your identity is being rewritten. Handling doubt and delay also means staying out of the energy of desperation. Desperation is rooted in fear that what you want won't come. It is a signal to your subconscious that you don't trust the assumption you cannot be in the state of the wish fulfilled and desperation at the same time. They contradict each other. The state of fulfillment is calm, trusting, and grounded. It does not rush, it does not plead. It simply is. You return to that state as often as necessary, no matter what appears to be happening around you. One of the most effective ways to handle doubt and delay is through movement. Keep living your life, keep taking actions that feel aligned. Don't sit around waiting. Waiting is a state and it delays the outcome. Move through your day as the version of you who already has it. Make decisions from that identity. Speak from it, dress from it, think from it. The more you embody the assumption in your everyday life, the less room there is for doubt to take root. You are not performing, you are practicing. You are practicing the state of fulfillment until it becomes natural. Eventually something shifts. Sometimes it happens gradually, sometimes suddenly, but it always happens when the inner state becomes more dominant than the outer condition. When your vision becomes more real to you than your current environment, life adjusts. It has no choice. The outer must follow the inner. It always has. Doubt and delay are not your enemies. They are the final illusions you must pass through before the assumption takes form. They ask one question: will you continue to believe even now? If your answer is yes, then you are ready, not because the world said so, but because you did. You decided, and your decision is enough. Chapter 18: The Mirror Principle. The outer world is not separate from your inner world. It is a mirror. It reflects back to you the dominant assumptions you hold about yourself, other people, and life itself. This is the mirror principle, a core idea within the law of assumption that transforms how you perceive and respond to your reality. You are not experiencing life as it is. You are experiencing life as you are. What you believe to be true, what you consistently expect, and what you unconsciously accept as normal will all be echoed in your environment. The people you interact with, the challenges you face, and the opportunities you receive all show up to reflect your self-concept and your internal state. This principle is not about blame, it is about awareness. It is not saying you consciously chose every circumstance in your life. It is saying your consciousness plays the leading role in how reality unfolds. If your internal assumptions are disempowered, chaotic, or rooted in lack, the mirror will show you evidence that supports those assumptions. If your internal assumptions are clear, grounded, and aligned with abundance, the mirror will reflect those truths. Instead, the world does not change independently, it follows your lead. Most people look at the mirror and try to change what they see without changing themselves. They argue with circumstances, they complain about how others treat them, they try to fix, force, and manipulate external factors in an attempt to feel better, but the mirror cannot change unless you do. You cannot stand in front of a mirror with a frown and expect it to show you a smile. You must smile first, and the reflection will follow. In the same way, you must assume the inner state of the person you want to be before your world will show you evidence of that change. When people treat you with disrespect, the mirror principle invites you to ask what within you continues to allow or expect that treatment. If you constantly experience financial struggle, it asks what Assumptions you still hold about money, worth, or lack. If you feel unseen, it asks whether you see yourself clearly and believe you deserve to be recognized. The mirror is not punishing you, it is responding to you, and this response is not always instant. There is often a delay between the internal shift and the external reflection, which is why consistency in your assumptions is so important. Understanding the mirror principle also means recognizing that others are responding to the identity you are projecting, whether or not you are aware of it. If you carry the belief that you are not good enough, you may unconsciously communicate that in your posture, your voice, your choices, or your energy, and people around you will reflect it, not out of malice, but because your state invites that dynamic. On the other hand, when you assume you are valuable, respected, and worthy, people often begin to respond to you with greater respect and warmth. Even if you say nothing, you did not change the world by force, you changed it by shifting the reflection you were offering. This principle is also what makes revision and state shifting so powerful. When you revise your assumptions and live in a new emotional reality, the mirror begins to adjust. It does not always change immediately, but it must change eventually. The outer cannot remain in contradiction to the inner forever. Either the outer will reflect your old self, or the inner will rise in strength and reset the reflection. This is why persistence in a new assumption is more powerful than reacting to old conditions. The conditions are not the cause, they are the mirror image of past beliefs. The mirror can also be used as feedback. If something in your life consistently triggers frustration, fear, or disappointment, it is an invitation to examine what you are assuming to be true in that area. Are you expecting people to let you down? Are you assuming success must come with struggle? Are you holding on to a belief that you have to do it all alone? These assumptions are not always obvious, but they always reveal themselves through repetition. What happens to you once might be random. What happens over and over is the mirror at work. Once you recognize the mirror principle, you stop taking things so personally. You understand that people are not rejecting you, they are responding to the energy you bring. You see that obstacles are not proof of failure, they are signs that old assumptions are still active. This realization does not lead to blame but to power, because if you created it through unconscious belief, you can recreate it through conscious assumption. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, you are the source. This shift in understanding changes how you move through life. You stop trying to fix others, you stop fighting the reflection, you focus instead on the inner image. You hold the assumption with clarity and calm. You say, I know who I am, I know what I expect, I know what I deserve. And you return to that state again and again, even when the mirror hasn't caught up. Eventually it must. The reflection always follows the image. Living by the mirror principle means taking full responsibility for your state without shame or pressure. It means choosing the version of you who already lives in peace, wealth, love, or confidence, and assuming that version every day. It means not panicking when the reflection is slow to shift. It means becoming so anchored in your inner truth that the outer world cannot help but yield to it. You do not have to explain yourself to the mirror. You do not have to beg or justify. You simply decide who you are and remain loyal to that decision. You feel the inner change before the outer world reflects it. You hold the image until the mirror agrees. Chapter 19. Living as the creator. There comes a point when practicing the law of assumption stops being a technique and becomes a way of life. It becomes your default mode of being, not something you reach for only when things go wrong. This shift marks your transition from someone who is trying to change their life to someone who knows they are the creator of it. Living as the creator is not about ego or control, it is about ownership. It is the recognition that your reality is not handed to you by chance, fate, or external forces. It is formed by you from the inside out, by your persistent assumptions, your chosen identity, and your internal state. To live as the creator is to stop waiting for something or someone to save you, fix you, or give you permission. You no longer blame circumstances or other people for your limitations. You no longer wait for the right time, the right opportunity, or the right mood. You choose the version of yourself you want to be and begin living from that version now. This does not mean you never feel fear or doubt. It means you don't surrender to those feelings. You see them for what they are, temporary echoes of your old self, and you move forward anyway. When you accept your role as the creator, you begin to understand that everything in your life is the result of a dominant pattern of thinking and feeling. Nothing happens in isolation. Every relationship, every result, every opportunity or lack thereof has its roots in your self-concept and assumptions. This awareness is not meant to create guilt, it is meant to free you, because if your life is the result of your consciousness, then all of it is subject to change. And if you can create something unconsciously, you can create something far better with intention. The creator does not live by reaction, the creator lives by design. While most people are waiting to see what happens so they can decide how to feel, the creator decides how to feel first, knowing that the world will respond accordingly. This is not delusion, it is conscious authorship. You wake up each day and ask not what the world will bring you, but who you are going to be. You don't wait to be motivated, you don't ask for permission to dream, you don't reduce your desires to match your current circumstances. You elevate your identity and expect your circumstances to catch up. Living as the creator also means being intentional with your focus. You become aware of where your attention goes because you understand that whatever you consistently focus on will grow. If you feed fear, fear expands. If you feed confidence, confidence expands. If you constantly think about what's missing, you create more lack. If you dwell on what is possible, you create momentum. The creator chooses focus deliberately. You stop indulging in mental habits that do not serve the life you are building. You begin to use your imagination, not to worry, but to rehearse success, not to prepare for disappointment, but to embody fulfillment. This way of living is not always easy. It requires you to show up differently. It asks you to break habits that feel familiar. It calls you to a higher level of personal integrity. When something goes wrong, you don't collapse, you adjust. You ask, what am I assuming here? Who am I being right now? What state am I occupying? And then you shift, not through willpower alone but through awareness. You realign with your chosen identity, and from that state you make your next move. The creator does not wait for the world to shift. The creator shifts themselves and lets the world follow. You will know you are living as the creator when you stop seeking validation for your beliefs. You don't need others to agree with your vision because you have already accepted it as truth. You don't need signs every day to reassure you that you're on the right path. You become your own evidence. You stop asking whether it's working and start living as if it already has, and because you do, the world begins to mirror your assumption with increasing accuracy. You stop being surprised by good things. You expect them, not with entitlement but with confidence. The creator is also deeply grounded. They are not immune to emotion, but they are not ruled by it. They allow themselves to feel fully, without letting temporary feelings rewrite their assumptions. They understand that emotion is energy and they direct it toward the vision rather than using it as a reason to abandon it. They don't panic when things appear to be going wrong. They don't spiral when something delays. They trust the process, not because every step is easy, but because they know they are the one walking the path. They are not being dragged by life anymore. To live as the creator is to live with freedom. You are no longer chained to your past. You are no longer limited by what has happened before. You are no longer trying to fit into someone else's version of success or happiness. You decide what your life means. You decide how you respond. You decide who you are, and that decision becomes the foundation for everything else. This is not a finish line. It is a way of being. You may still be growing, learning, expanding, and evolving, but your role is clear now. You are not a passive participant. You are the cause. You are not reacting to life. You are expressing it, and that expression is shaped moment by moment through your assumptions, your beliefs, your state of being, and your identity. When you live as the creator, life becomes more fluid. You stop resisting challenges and start using them. You stop fearing change and start directing it. You stop waiting and start being, and in that being, everything you've assumed begins to materialize, not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with it. Chapter 20: The Ripple Effect: How Your Assumption Elevates Others. Assumption is not a solitary act. While it begins in the privacy of your own mind, its impact reaches far beyond your internal world. The assumptions you hold about yourself inevitably influence how you show up in relationships, how you interact with others, and how people respond to you. Your consciousness does not exist in isolation. It vibrates outward, shaping not only your personal reality but also the dynamics around you. When you embody a higher assumption of confidence, worthiness, love, peace, or power, you create a ripple effect. Others sense it, absorb it, and often respond by rising to meet it. Most people try to change their world by changing others. They attempt to correct, control, or convince, but this rarely works, and even when it seems to, the change is usually temporary or strained. The reason is simple: the most effective influence is energetic, not verbal. What you believe about someone silently informs how you treat them, how you interpret their behavior, and what kind of space you hold for them. Your assumptions about another person shape how they see themselves in your presence. This is why people feel different around different individuals, not because they've changed, but because the assumptions they are being met with have changed. When you assume greatness in someone, even when they are struggling, you give them something to rise toward. When you assume they are capable, loving, evolving, and powerful, even if they don't yet believe it themselves, you reflect back a version of them that is higher than their current state. You do not lecture them into growth. You assume it. You see them as already embodying it. You interact with them from that place, and often they begin to align with that version because it feels better than the one they've been carrying. The change comes not from your words, but from your unwavering assumption. This ripple effect can be seen in families, friendships, workplaces, and romantic relationships. If you hold the assumption that a partner is selfish or inattentive, you'll often find evidence to support that belief. You'll filter their actions through the lens of your assumption, and even neutral behavior will be misinterpreted. But if you assume they are loving and thoughtful, you begin to respond differently. You soften, you listen more, you interpret things through a different emotional filter. This change in you invites a change in them. They feel safer, more valued, more seen, and they begin to show up differently, not because you ask them to, but Because your energy made it possible, this does not mean you deny poor behavior or stay in unhealthy situations. It means you understand the power of your perception. You choose your assumptions with care, knowing they are not only creating your reality but influencing the realities of those around you. You stop assuming that people will disappoint you. You stop expecting conflict, betrayal, or misunderstanding. You begin to see others through a lens of empowerment, trust, and potential, and in doing so, you create an environment where higher versions of them can emerge. Assuming the best in others is not naive, it is leadership, it is spiritual maturity, it is a refusal to lower your vision to match someone's current limitations. Instead, you raise the standard in your mind and interact with them from that place. You become the one who believes when they cannot, and that belief becomes a mirror. Over time, they begin to see themselves differently, not always, not instantly, but often enough to know that something powerful is happening through your consciousness alone. This ripple effect also applies on a broader scale. When you walk into a room holding an assumption of peace, you carry a calm that others feel. When you operate from abundance, you stop competing and start elevating. When you embody self-love, you teach others by example how to treat themselves. The assumption you hold becomes a permission slip for others. They see you live with freedom, and it reminds them they can too. They see you succeed without struggle, and it challenges the belief that life must be hard. They see you trust yourself, and they begin to question their own doubts. You are no longer bound to repeat the past. You are no longer required to wait for permission, proof, or external validation. You have stepped into the role of creator, the one who defines reality from within. The law of assumption is not a trick or a temporary mindset. It is a way of being. When you assume the identity of the version of you who already has what they desire, the world begins to reflect that identity. Your job is not to fight for change, but to faithfully embody the change you've already chosen. You do not force, you align. You do not chase, you attract. You do not wait, you live from the end now. And as you live in that end, life reorganizes itself around your inner truth. So walk forward with quiet certainty. Hold your assumptions with love and strength. Speak, move, decide, and create from the place where it is already done, because it is. Assume wisely, assume consistently, assume boldly. Your reality is listening.